Good evening, friends. So good to see you guys here tonight. My name is Kelly, if we have not met, and I am the intern pastor here at Praxis. If it's your first time here, welcome. We're currently in a 3-part series on relationships, which I know is a topic that everyone loves to hear about. And tonight we're continuing our relationship series on dating. And this is my beautiful, amazing husband, Logan.
If you were not here last week, there's zero need to clap, I promise.
Cam, I see you.
So much. Oh, that's Cam. Thank you for the clap. You're wonderful. If you guys were not here last week, I'm one of the worship leads here with Cam, another girl, Joe, who sings up here. I kind of hide in the back when I'm not on stage, and that's a choice. So if you've never seen me before, it's not on purpose, but it's a little bit on purpose.
That's why he wears black, so you blend in.
So I blend into the crowd. But we talked about last week, extrovert like to the 1,000th millionth degree, and very much introvert. So I would love to meet you, but if I have not talked to you before, it's because I ran away to go home.
Yes, and last week we talked about singleness, and just a reminder that our series is on singleness, dating, and marriage. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's in that particular order. If you feel called to be single for the rest of your life, that is a beautiful calling, and we absolutely see you and we affirm you. What did we talk about last week, if you want to recap?
So we made 3 specific points, and it wasn't that these are things that you need to be doing to be single well, but these are things that we found really helpful in our single season. And also, if it felt a little bit like a different type of sermon last week, it wasn't so much of a sermon as it was like a testimony, just so you can kind of get to know us. It's a lot to come to church and see people you've probably never seen before, as in this guy, and hear them talk about things that are really important in life. So we kind of wanted you to get to know us and our relationship a little bit. You'll hear a little bit more about that tonight, but last week was specifically just getting to know us and not so much a sermon like trying to teach you stuff. So last week we learned 3 things about what we found important in our single season. First one was you got to know God, and his abundant love for you is really the only thing that matters, and he wants to change your life and not scorn you and tell you how horrible you are and how much he hates you, because that's not the God that we know at all. And then once you know God, that's how we get to know ourselves. We have to have a really firm foundation in who Jesus is, to then know who we are as an individual person. And then once we have a good sense of ourselves through therapy, through life experiences, through getting to know ourselves and our hearts, then that's how we know our identity in God. And that's how we relate to people in church. That's how we would find our passion in life. So know God, know yourself, know your identity in God. And that was how we found really much of our importance in singleness.
Yeah, absolutely, like contentment in singleness. So just a disclaimer, we're going to say this every week. We're not experts.
Not even a little bit.
Not even a little bit. But we do think there is value in sharing our experiences and value in tying into biblical content. And so tonight we're talking about dating, which is so fun to talk about. There's so much to talk about, but we only have 30 minutes. So actually at this point, it's like 25 minutes. So let's just dive right in. Our first point, we have 3 points tonight. Our first point tonight is intentionality.
Before we do that, though, we're going to tell you a little bit of our story.
Oh, I can't
of
wait.
Dating. You did great.
I actually forgot about this.
This is her literal favorite story to tell in the entire world.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm going to go back. Okay.
You got this, buddy. Great job.
Thank you. This is why I need Logan around, because I literally don't even know what I ate yesterday. So we want to tell you about our dating story. And fun fact, we actually met right on this stage. Isn't that, I know, right? November 12th, 2022, guys. We met like right in this corner over here. So I was doing announcements for Anthem, which is our Saturday morning service, and Logan was singing. And we had never been on the same worship team. But I had seen him a few times, like just in the audience. And I remember thinking, like, that guy seems so cool. I would really love to meet him. And even if I did meet him, I would just so want to be his friend. He just seems so cool. And so the night before, I remember looking on Planning Center, and that's the thing that we use to like see what's going ahead in the order of like what we're doing. And so I checked it that night because I was like, oh shoot, Friday night, I just realized I have to do announcements on Saturday morning. So I checked it and it said Logan was singing. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to meet my crush tomorrow. And I remember calling my best friend, Olivia. I think she's staying here tonight. I don't know if she's in here. Oh, she's in the back. And I called her immediately, and it was like 11:30 p.m. at night on a Friday night. And I said, Olivia, I want to meet my crush tomorrow, and what if I die tonight and I don't wake up and I don't get to meet my crush? And she's like, calm down. Let's just talk about like what you're going to wear tomorrow. So she calmed me down, and we planned out my outfit. And the next day, I come to church, and I'm sitting like in this front row here as everyone's practicing. And Logan is standing up here, and I was like, I just got to say hi to him. So I just go up to him.
We're actually going to act this out for you.
Are we going to act it out?
Really quick. It's the shortest little thing. And this is specifically so you guys know that you do not have to have game to meet the person you meet. I have 0 game, and I'm going to tell you the exact way this went. You ready? All right. So she walks up. I see her. So right before this, there's a little bit of context. We had this worship conference at Crosswalk, and they're talking about how we need to introduce ourselves to people, and like it means a lot when you say, hey, I'm Logan, it's really nice to meet you. That goes a long way. And I was like, I'm going to do that to every single person I meet the next week at Anthem. And I did that to everyone, and I saw her sitting right there, and I said, nope, she's too cute, can't do it. I'm not going to do it. So she comes up, and we just finished the set, standing right here, and I'm like, no, I got nothing. I literally cannot talk. Nope, not going to happen. So she comes up, and she goes,
hi, I don't think we've met. I'm Kelly.
hi, I'm Logan.
Nice to meet you.
How's it going?
Just another Saturday.
That was it.
And that was our whole love story.
A little bit later that day, we talked like 2 or 3 times, and one of the questions that Anthem was asking today was, have you seen the new Black Panther movie? And so we talked 30 seconds about that movie, about just random movies, which is funny because she doesn't watch any movies or TV shows at all. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the first things we talked about. I went up to her in the green room after church, and she'd done announcements that day, so I went up to her, and
I didn't know what to say. He came up to me this time, and I was like, I've never not known what to say to a person.
I got a little bit braver. So I came up to her, and this is like the chummiest I get. I am fairly reserved, and I don't really go out of my way to talk to people, so I went up to her, I touched her arm, and I said, you have a really relaxing voice. I could listen to you talk all day.
Thank you. I was shocked, you guys. My jaw fell on the ground, and I had to be like, thank you. People have told me that I should start a podcast. And he said, well, whenever you start your podcast, let me know. And then he walked away. And I was
bounced quickly.
I wanted to talk to you, though, but I had nothing else to say. I was just like, you did great today, too. And that was it.
Yep.
So
the quick version after that, because if we let her talk about the story, she will tell the entire 2.5 years we've been together.
Yeah.
Like every small little detail.
It was the best day of my life.
So we'll get a little bit more of kind of the dating story of how we progressed through this, but we started talking. I waited a little bit to, you have something to say?
Yeah, you forgot a really big thing.
What's that?
Okay, so after we met that day,
I knew this was going to happen.
all I wanted to do was talk about how I met my crush. And so I called all my friends, and I was like, guys, I finally met my crush. And they were like, okay, did you do anything about it? And I was like, no. They're like, okay, you're going to add him on Instagram? And I was like, no. All I've done is stare at his Instagram, but I don't want to add him. I just want to play it cool because I don't need to be in a relationship. I just really like this person for some reason. And I just need to sit in that. I just need to be okay with that. And one day I was talking to my friend Janae on the phone, and she and I were talking, I was telling her about how I was meeting Logan, I met Logan. And so I'm like, I need to show you his Instagram. So I go on his Instagram, and as I'm on his Instagram, it said, Logan Dickinson added you as a friend. And I said, oh my gosh, he added me the moment I was on his page. And I was like, this is so crazy and creepy. Like, I'm just on his Instagram that often. So then I let my phone sit for an hour and a half because I was like, I can't seem too desperate.
She stuck me in the friend zone, and I climbed my way out.
No, not true. So then I added him an hour and a half later, and he sent me a message probably like 5 minutes within.
Well, the second you added me, I had the message already pre-written out, and I sent it.
So then I saw that he sent me a message, and I was like, well, I can't read it right away. So I waited another hour and a half. In the meantime, I had screenshot Logan added me on Instagram and sent it to another one of my friends who knew his friend who screenshot that and sent it to him and was like, Kelly's excited. I had no idea any of that happened. I feel like that kind of gave him the green light, though, that I was interested. So it gave him that kind of insight, like, this is the right way, like, you're doing the right thing. So I think that was a good thing.
That's a great thing. It worked out pretty well.
It did.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
I'm done.
very good job, buddy. Good story.
Thank
so,
you.
very long story short, we talked for a while. We dated for 7 months. So we started talking on Tuesday, November 22nd. On Friday that same week, so 3 days later, I said, yeah, this is the girl I'm going to marry. I'm 100% sure that this is the girl I'm going to marry. She waited much longer.
I
could not convince her.
I feel like, for me, I was a little traumatized from previous relationships. So I was like, I gotta make sure this is the right person before I put all my eggs in a basket. But Logan was single for 8 years, and he always said, whoever impresses me is probably the person I will marry. And I was the first person to impress him. So,
Sure were.
yay.
So, we dated for 7 months. Do you have more to say?
But then,
Okay.
I need to add one more thing.
I figured you
promise
would.
it's the last one.
No, it's not.
But there was this thing that I always worried about in every relationship I got in. And I never really shared it out loud to God, but it was something that I was really insecure about. And it was that my parents would never approve of whoever I'm with. And as the eldest daughter in my family, and as someone who really takes care of the family, if my parents don't approve of who I'm with, then to me, I can't live comfortably knowing like my other half is not someone that will be a part of my parents' lives either. So for me, that was a huge insecurity. And a week after we started talking, he texted me and said, hey, I told my mom about you. And I was like, oh, okay. And he said, you said that you were from Thousand Oaks. Well, we're from Camarillo, which is the city next door. And she texted me and said, hey, honey, I was just wondering, you told me that Kelly was from Thousand Oaks, but I was, I worked with a guy named Roger Lynn. And he was really sweet, and he came to work all the time at the media office in Thousand Oaks. And he was so funny and sweet, and everyone at the office loved him. Do you think Kelly knows who that is? So he sent that to me, and I said, you've got to be kidding me. Roger Lynn is my dad. Friends, I had never prayed about this before. And yet God knew my heart, and he knew what I needed. And that gave me so much peace to know, like, okay, my dad and my future mother-in-law already know each other. They're going to love Logan. And so when they did meet Logan, my dad was like, Logan, I came to your baby shower. I actually met you when you were an infant.
I walked in their door at their house, and he said, I went to your baby shower.
So crazy, so crazy. Okay, I think I'm done now.
We'll find out in a sec. So we went through all that stuff. We dated for 7 months. At the 6-month mark, exactly. So we actually planned our wedding before I proposed, like a couple of weeks before, because we had to pick a date. We dated for 7 months. We got married. And
now
that's the
it's
short
been like
story.
2 years almost of
It'll be 2
marriage.
years in June.
Yeah. Yay!
Thank you.
Marriage.
We have 3 points. We're going to go through this fast now because there's a lot of stuff.
Okay, so now that you know a little bit about our dating story, which is literally my favorite story in the whole world, we want to move to 3 points about dating. And the first one...
And these are not 3 things that everyone has to do to have a sexual, but these are things that we found really important to us that helped us feel really comfortable and safe moving forward with each other.
Yeah, the first one is intentionality is in, okay? You know how like Brat Girl Summer was in? Intentionality is in. And not being intentional leaves our partners or the person that we're talking to feeling really uneasy, maybe even questioning every single step of that relationship. But being intentional helps our partners feel really secure in every step of our journey together. So, friends, I want you to think about someone who is not really intentional. Imagine you're hanging out with one person, maybe someone of the opposite sex, and it's just the two of you whenever you guys hang out, and you hang out a lot, quite often actually. And you go and eat together, and you never really have the talk of like, hey, what is this? Like, is this something more? And you just keep it kind of nebulous. You never really address it. And you kind of both are hoping that something better comes along, so you just never talk about it. Okay, now think of someone that you do know that is intentional behind everything that they do. Maybe it's someone who notices that you got a new haircut. Or maybe someone who's like, hey, you got your nails done. They look really good today. Or maybe they intentionally say hi to you, and that when you do go out and you have a meal with them, and you both talk about, hey, what is this relationship? And you have a really healthy conversation about it. Compare the two. Which would you rather have, right? I think a lot of us probably prefer someone who is intentional. And intentionality can look really different for everyone. I think there's also intentionality in waiting while we're dating. And I shared this last night at our women's ministry, small group. But waiting is not wasting. Waiting is not wasting. It's preparing. And I say this because Logan said that after he met me, he waited 10 days to figure out if he really actually liked me or if he just thought I was just cute and like maybe it was just like a physical attraction. He sat and he waited and he wrestled with that and prayed and asked God, like, what does this actually mean? I joked that I waited 3 hours before talking to him, but really, like, I felt like I was waiting for him to kind of make that move, and talking to my friends about it really helped because they kind of helped push the message along that I was interested also. There's this story in the book of Acts where at the very end of the book of Acts, Paul, who is an apostle, he gets shipwrecked on this island called Malta. And this island was completely unmarked. In fact, they had no idea that this island even existed. And during that time, like Paul writes, like, I know that I'm still going to make it to Rome. I know that that's the end goal. But for some reason, God has me here. And so I'm going to faithfully serve in this season. I'm going to faithfully wait because I know it's preparing me for something that God has in the future. And I'm going to faithfully wait for God's timing. I know that when we were talking, I intentionally waited to respond to you. We intentionally waited to get to know each other via text before we even talked about a first date. We waited to hold hands or to kiss just so that we understood and like knew each other thoroughly before we had any sort of physical intimacy in that way. And we want to be really comfortable around each other before we wanted to add that layer of physical intimacy. I think it's so natural to want to hurry and to rush into something because you're excited. Like, I think in the past, I would have wanted to rush and to go into things quickly. But when you trust the process and the journey, and when you realize, like, nothing else you can do can move things along, you are truly completely reliant on God's timing. You have to be completely dependent on, like, okay, God, I'm putting this in your hands. I'm not going to do anything to push this along. I'm just going to allow you to prepare my heart because I know that your timing is perfect. Something that was really beautiful that Logan said to me was, we could wait 7 years before we get married. I want you to know that this is the first time and this is the last time that I'll ever get to know you for the first time. And he wanted to enjoy and to cherish every part of that journey of getting to know me for the first time and for the last time. To which I responded and said, but what if I get amnesia? And he was like, then I'll get to know you again.
No hearts, no sad eyes. Like, that's so sweet. As what if I get amnesia? And that sums up our relationship. I think there's a lot of beauty in waiting for something, whether it's a relationship, whether it's whatever you want in life. Waiting, for me, taught me how to not rush through the emotions we feel as we experience things. If we had rushed through dating, specifically just getting to know each other, what if that she wasn't the person that I was going to end up with? And I had rushed through and I had fallen in love with her already, but I was like, oh, shoot, like, she doesn't believe what I believe in. Like, our political views are very different. Luckily, everything matched up perfectly, which is why I was like, no, I'm going to marry that girl. But if I had already fallen in love with her and told her I loved her and fallen head over heels and been like, no, oh my goodness, I'm going to marry her. And I had not waited and sat through all the uncertainty that I might have had, like it's much harder to break up with someone once you're already fully physically and emotionally invested in someone.
It's true.
So that was my 10 days. I said, all right, I met this cute girl. I need to find a way to get back to Anthem to like run into her somewhere. I did not because I lived 2 hours away. So for 10 days, I was like, all right, am I lonely or do I want to like pursue something with this girl? Do I just think she's cute or do I actually like want to talk to her? Like, am I just physically attracted to her? Or like, is it cool that she's a pastor and that I like that? So I remember literally going on Instagram and I looked through Kelsey's Instagram because she was private. So I was like, I'm going to look through Kelsey's. I have no idea who Kelsey is, but she has pictures of her. I got to go look at her. So I just looked at pictures and I was like, all right, is she cute or am I just lonely? And I was like, no, she's cute. Okay. She's cute. She's real cute. So after 10 days, I was like, all right. And the night before, last week, I told some people about my best friend Janelle, who's sitting up here yelling because she's wild.
She's wild.
I was texting her. I think we were on FaceTime the night before, and she said, "Are you going to text her already?" And I said, "I'm taking one more day. If things go the way I want them to, this is going to be the last day ever that I am not talking to her." So I waited one more night, and then I texted her the next evening, and then that's how that whole thing kind of played out. But specifically with intentionality in getting to know each other means a lot of being intentional with who you are and not trying to fake being this person that's exciting for someone maybe. Like, I know Instagram profiles and like making yourself seem much better and cooler than you actually are gets attractive people to maybe pay a little bit more attention to you. But if you're wanting to find a mate and finding someone to spend your life with, like that stuff wears off after a while. You got to be fully yourself to figure out if this is someone that you want to be compatible with. With my last relationship I talked about last week, there was a lot of games and manipulation, and I recognized that way too late because I was already very, very emotionally invested in this person and didn't really feel safe. But I said, you know what? I'm in love with her. It doesn't really matter. Like, this is what love is. So after that whole relationship ended, I said, I am going to wait until I find someone who is as intentional as I want to be. And the second we started talking, I mentioned some past relationship stuff, and she was the most affirming, like, hey, your heart deserves to be protected. One big thing that happened in my last relationship was there was a lot of texting other guys when I was still with her, and that didn't make me feel super good. There's a healthy amount of unfaithfulness, so I was very, very, like, keenly aware of any time I was even like a little bit talking to someone or getting to know someone, like, do I see those tendencies in them? And I was very, very specific on those things. And I remember she told me about a relationship that she had a couple months before, and I almost started to feel anxious. I'm like, okay. And one of the first things that she said to me, I have the text right here. This is after 4 or 5 days of talking. We've just been talking about random stuff. I was like, all right, maybe in a couple weeks I'll tell her that I like her. She texts me out of the blue and says, I'm going to over-communicate with you because I like to be very clear and not wishy-washy about my intentions. I find your friendship incredibly intriguing and interesting, and I'm curious about you. I'm also a very private person, so I will not share my feelings or thoughts with anyone except for super close friends. And we talked a little bit more about stuff. My response to that was, my intentions are that I'm very interested in you, and getting to know you is my new favorite activity. I know what my intentions are with you, but I'm not in a rush to get there. Regardless of wherever this leads, I'm very comfortable taking my time and learning about you and growing our friendship. So intentionality. This whole time we talked, I'm the weirdest dude. Like, there's not a lot of normal stuff about me. And she is the strangest person I've ever met.
I'm very weird.
After a couple months of dating, her best friend, she met me on FaceTime for the first time. She's like, you know Kelly's weird, right? I said, yeah, very much so. That's why I love her so much. So we had been our full intentional selves. We got to know each other. Within minutes of texting each other. Actually, we were still DMing at that point. We were talking about political stuff. We were talking about our views on the church. We were talking about like attachment styles and relationships and past traumas. Like, we got into it super quick. The more you are yourself and the more you just be vulnerable and just open yourself and, hey, this is me. Like, that's so much easier for another person to get to know the real you, and that's so much easier to connect with someone.
Yeah, and I think when I first met Logan, I was a little guarded because I wasn't allowed to fully express my emotions as much in previous relationships. And also, I think I thought in my after my last relationship ended, I thought, I will never not be 100% myself again. If I'm ever to go into another relationship, I promise to myself, I owe it to myself, that I will be 100% authentically me. So if I ever meet anyone, it's not to seek emotional dependency, it's not to seek affirmation, it's not to seek validation, but it's to go into it knowing I'm confidently who I am because I'm a child of God, I know my identity, and I can trust the process. And all of this took time. Another thing about intentionality too is, well, I don't know if this goes into it, but I want to add to it.
You got it though, you're doing great.
But it's affirmation. I think God affirms in little ways, like how I was talking about my father and my mother-in-law worked together in 1988 before either of us were born. To me, that was so shocking. Another thing that was surprising was 2 weeks after we started talking, Logan works as a nurse, and he worked out in Oxnard. So he worked at St. Joe's, and that's through Dignity Health. Now, they have another hospital here in San Bernardino called St. Bernardine, and he has been looking for a float pool nurse, day shift, 12-hour shift, for the last 4 years, and he has never seen that job open. So after we started talking, he was like, you know what, why not try? I'm just gonna go and look. He goes online, he looks, there's one opening, and he has never seen that opening there in the last 4 years. So to us, it was like God continuously affirming us, and as we are being intentional, God continues to affirm us. And so I think when we intentionally let our partner get to know the real us and who we are, and we clearly let them know our intentions, we set ourselves up for a really healthy and successful relationship. Okay, that was point one. Hopefully
We might go a few
through.
minutes over tonight. I am so sorry.
We can get
Hang
through
out
point
with
two.
us.
Point two is communication is key. We're communicating with you that we might go over a little bit. We can only be intentional when we communicate, right? And unhealthy communication leads to feeling misunderstood, sometimes even hostile. And healthy communication leads to understanding feelings and increased sense of trust. So we're going to give you 2 examples, good and bad communication, and we need you guys to tell us, is this a good or a bad communication? Okay, so the first scenario, I'm currently getting my master's degree in pastoral ministry. And so the scenario is this. I have 3 papers that I need to write in a week, and I have done none of them.
These are due in 3 days, and this is not a one-time event. This happens probably 6 or...
You don't have to rat me out in front of everyone.
Oh, I do. I do. This is my mental support
I love
group.
to procrastinate, okay?
She is the best at it.
Any other procrastinators here? Yes, thank you. Preaching to the choir tonight. Oh, yeah,
Nobody,
amen.
Nobody. All right. She has 3 papers due in 3 days. I say, and if you guys weren't here last week, I call her buddy. I don't know why. It just kind of happened one day.
He called me a lot of things.
I got a lot of things. So I say, hey, buddy, have you written your papers?
Yeah, I'm gonna. I just haven't done it for the last 2 days.
Okay. The next day, hey, buddy, have you written your papers?
I'm gonna. I just haven't done it in the last
It's the
2
day
days.
before they're due. It's like 9 p.m. They're due at midnight. Hey, buddy, have you written your papers?
You're gonna be fine.
And I say, hey, buddy, I'm getting a little stressed. I really need you to write your papers. And you say,
You're gonna be okay.
is that good or bad communication? Good. No.
I literally saw someone like turn their face and be like, "Oh, not good."
Y'all gotta help me out. All right.
Yeah,
next
that was
example.
Okay, next example.
So this next one, this is right after we told. Yeah, a little bit after we told each other we liked each other. I think I told a story last week about when Janelle and Kelly spent the whole weekend together, and I was like,
72 hours together.
literally, that sounds exhausting to me, but they spent the whole time together. She was the person I was super in love with, and Janelle was my best friend, and I just wanted to talk to her about Kelly, and I couldn't talk to either one of them. I was at work, and I was feeling super anxious, and I had no idea where it came from. So as I'm at work, they're hanging out. I was texting her, and I started texting a little bit less, and I was like, oh, I'm having a little panic attack. I've never had one of these. I don't like this. So I texted Kelly this. I'm going to read another text to you. I said, I was feeling pretty anxious tonight, and I didn't know why. I'm still not totally sure. But what I'm chalking it up to is that I think I just got a little bit jealous that Janelle got to be with you this much and I'm still far away. It's not rational, and I'm very aware of that. But I think all these emotions I've been feeling these last couple weeks finally caught up to me, and then they came out in a way I've never experienced before. I got to talk to Janelle about it, and I'm okay now. This is all just so new for me. I didn't know I had this many feelings. And what did you say?
I said, thank you so much for sharing. Can I please call you or FaceTime you ASAP?
That was the first time we FaceTimed. Is that good or bad communication?
Thank
I feel
you.
so affirmed now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Also, that was the first time I realized he really liked me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is the real deal.
And just a very quick note, like, that could have been super embarrassing. Like, I'm having a little bit of an anxiety attack about a girl I really like, and I could have just kind of been like, no, I'm cool. Like, it's all right. Like, I feel good. But I fully wanted to be vulnerable, like, hey, I really like you.
Yeah.
I had a mini panic attack because I like you so much.
Yeah.
That's embarrassing, but we're married, y'all. That worked.
I actually didn't see it as embarrassing. I was like, that's actually so attractive. Okay, so anyway, you can tell that Logan is really good at sharing his feelings. I'm actually a little bit of a robot sometimes, so sometimes I don't understand feelings as much. You stop. But you can see that in both conversations, Logan shared his feelings. And then in one, I was very dismissive, and in another, I was more affirming. And I will always admit, I am not perfect whatsoever, and I don't have it all together. But imagine you are in a relationship with someone who views the world so differently, you often find yourself getting hurt every single time you share your feelings. That first conversation that we had becomes every single conversation because it just feels dismissive every time. The more you communicate your needs, the more they tell you, actually, it's your fault. You need to be a bigger person. And before I met Logan, I was told that I was being needy or that I needed to just fix myself first. And I was so afraid to ever bring up any sort of feelings that I had because I was taught that if you were to be completely open and to communicate your feelings, it would only lead to negative emotions. I realized in the past I had different communication styles with different partners because it brought different things out of me. And I constantly felt misunderstood. And anytime I would want to bring something up, and I would bring it up, I felt a lack of trust. I felt a lot of defensiveness. I felt a lot of resentment growing, and I also had a lot of fear. I had a lot of hesitation. Because also, when I first met Logan, I knew that I wasn't into just dating for fun. I met him when I was 32. He was 30. Yes, I'm a cougar. But I was also really afraid of him being someone who was afraid of commitment. Like, I've met people who are commitment phobic. And when Logan communicated to me, like, I know my intentions with you, and he said that I wasn't needy, and he said he was interested in me, that immediately put me at ease for the rest of our relationship. We're also given a lot of great examples of communication in the Bible. I know earlier I talked about the book of Acts, but the first 2 chapters of the book of Acts, there's 28 chapters. The first 2 books show this beautiful representation of what the early church looked like. Everyone shared everything. Everyone was always giving to one another. They were always communicating and praying over each other. But then the remaining rest of the book, the rest of the 26 chapters, I'm good at math, the rest of the 26 chapters is about how many people fumbled, how many people messed up, how many people miscommunicated, and even strong church leaders. Like, there's a story of Paul and Barnabas. They get into this horrible dispute. In fact, they are arguing about if John Mark could be a companion with them. And it gets so bad that they eventually split completely. For the rest of the book of Acts, they don't speak anymore. And you never actually know what happens to the 2 of them because it's written just in the Bible that they separate and they leave. And Barnabas goes off with John Mark, and Paul goes off with Silas. And it's really sad to see that, but it's also kind of a good reminder that communication, whether good or bad, is everywhere. And the beautiful thing is that healthy communication can be redeemed, especially in God's kingdom. Later in Paul's letters in Colossians and in 2 Timothy, he actually writes to church members to welcome John Mark if he comes into the church, which goes to show that he eventually reconciled. We don't have documentation on how that happened, but clearly things were cleared up and understanding was restored. And so, what does healthy communication look like?
So a couple things that I always like to keep in mind with healthy communication, just to kind of quickly go through these so we don't take too long. Listening is your best friend. As an introvert, this is where I shine my absolute brightest because I don't want to talk. So I will just sit and listen to you for 45 minutes if you want to talk, forever and ever. And that's most of our relationship. She has every word in the dictionary and she spouts it off as quickly as possible. I just sit there with a smile and I say, thanks for telling me these things, buddy. So listening and seeking to understand before you do anything else will take you a very, very, very long way. A lot of times when we feel hurt or attacked, it's very easy to feel very defensive and spout back with something to get that other person back. Something that I try not to fail in as much as possible is I have never once in my entire life, no matter how good it might have felt, regretted taking the high road. Never once. And when I don't do that, I feel horrible. Like I'm the quickest to apologize. I want to say, you know what, that's not who I choose to be, and I'm really sorry, and I failed you that, and that will not happen again. So, saying things in a kind way, even when you're hurt. Body language is very important, and probably one of the biggest things that has guided me. My mom is a marriage and family therapist, and we grew up with a lot of emotions from her, just learning how to navigate those things. So knowing your emotions before you get into a conversation. I think everyone's probably heard the, what's it called? The Bible verse about not going to bed angry and always just talking about things right so you don't go to bed angry so you harbor resentment. There's a lot of truth in that, but also if your emotions are high and all you're going to do is fight and yell at each other, maybe go to sleep and rest and get something to eat and then talk about it. That might help a little bit too. So in any amount of communication at any point between the two of our relationship, my only goal is to understand the heart behind what she's saying. If I can't understand what she means by what she's saying, and there's sometimes a little bit of detective work, like you have to get to know that person. She is my favorite thing to study in the world. I want to predict everything that she can do before she even thinks about wanting to do it.
He's really good at it.
It's because my favorite thing in the world. This is the love of my life. Forever and ever and ever. There is no amount of studying that will ever be too much to get to know her. That's my only goal in life. I just want to get to know her so I can give her the absolute best and happiest life imaginable. You saw in our text, even before we knew that we loved each other, we overly communicated because there's never too much communication to go through. One of the cool things I really liked was, I don't remember how we brought it up, but I was saying that because I was singing at Crosswalk that I think the next day after we told each other we liked each other, I was like, hey, I'm singing this next day. If you want to hang out, I would love to, but I never expect you to be at all the times that I'm singing somewhere. And she said, hey, that's a good idea. Let's talk about that. I never need you to come to every time I'm preaching a sermon. Let's communicate about that. We weren't even dating yet. We even talked about dating. But we said we don't expect our partners to be every single place that we want to go.
I think we have still kept that, though. Anytime he sings or anytime I preach, we still manage to make it. So we kept that up.
And then we communicated on, hey, what would it look like if we got married?
Yeah.
Even before we were ready to get married.
A lot of our relationship has been affirming each other and our feelings and communicating our feelings as well. Because feelings don't come naturally, emotions don't come naturally to me. It has to be kind of explained to me, and Logan's really patient with that. But a relationship with healthy communication is just going to continue to grow your relationship even more and give you more reasons to want to share more of your, I used to be I can't tell you too much. And now he's just tell me everything all the time. And I think I've been in unhealthy relationships, which makes me want to close up and avoid communicating altogether. Which brings us to point 3, which is conflict is natural. Unhealthy conflict leads to turning away from each other, and healthy conflict leads to growing closer together. But the thing is I hate conflict. I still hate conflict. And I truly never understood healthy conflict. I'm still learning about it because growing up, my parents only talked to each other in one volume and in one way, and it was just loud and angry. And in relationships, I just viewed conflict as like negative all the time because it just meant that my partner was either mad at me or I was mad at the other person. And anytime an issue would come up, I just dragged my feet to go and to restore that relationship. It didn't give me joy or excitement, right? Like, that to me is just not fun. So you can imagine the shock that I had and that I experienced when I started dating a very healthy person who actually invited healthy conflict. He was like, I can't wait. I remember him telling me, I can't wait when we have our first conflict. And I was like, why would you ever say that? I never want to have conflict.
It's still my favorite thing to do.
And he said that he just appreciated the difficult conversations because that only grows you closer together. And so Logan has said this very early on, that difficult conversations only grow us as a couple. I think I look towards the Bible for a lot of times when I just need help with certain things, and one of them is conflict. There's a lot of things in the Bible that talks about conflict. There's ones where it's like, if you can't agree on something between two people, bring a third person in, bring in the community, bring in, your pastor, bring in more and more people and ask the Holy Spirit to guide. But the greatest person who handled conflict perfectly, literally perfectly, is Jesus. And anytime you see him walk on, into a scene, everything that he does riles somebody up. There's conflict all around him. In fact, the Jewish people were oppressed by the Roman Empire during that time. The Pharisees saw themselves as greater than everyone else. And so everything that Jesus did was very countercultural, and it just conflicted with what the Pharisees were trying to teach. But Jesus, being perfect and divine, but also human, he knew his identity. He was intentional in everything that he did. And so you never see him stutter, right? Like, if someone's mad at him, he's just so calm, and he knows exactly what to say next. And I noticed that this is also because he withdrew often to his Father. And that's something that I have to keep reminding myself, too, is we have to keep turning to Scripture. Like, I think it's so corny for a pastor to say that, but every time I read about Jesus, who is literally God, needing to go and pray, how much more do we as humans need to withdraw and to go and pray in our quiet spaces?
I think a small addition to that is prayer is the best thing you can do, but also just going in solitude to not be in the situation you're in. Like, Jesus went away to go pray and center himself. So what does that look like for us? Like, we go pray, or we just sit and say, hey, what are these emotions I'm having right now? I'm kind of angry. Why am I angry?
Logan's an internal processor, so anytime something like bad happens, he just sits there and he's silent. And it scares me because if anything bad happens to me, I'm calling every single person to tell them all the bad things that happened. And I need to externally process everything. So when he's quiet, it startles me. But anyway, when conflict arises, which it will in your dating experiences, I think it's a perfect practice ground for what your conversations will look like in marriage. There's a few questions that I think are really helpful, so I'm going to just put them up on the screen. But are you dating intentionally to marry? Oh, yes, this is it. Are you dating intentionally to marry? Or is this just a romantic and emotional partnership? Are you at peace after you talk, or are you in turmoil? Do you both turn to God in these moments of conflict, or is it just one person turning to God? These conversations, honestly, are the perfect practice ground to help you decipher that.
That was good. I didn't see those questions before, but I like those. That's
Thank
good.
you.
So I grew up in a very calm household. The first time I went over to her house, it was just loud all the time. I love her family as if they're my absolute own family, but it's so loud, and I am not used to it. So we grew up in a very calm household. we saw conflict. My parents had conflict in front of us, but it was never shouting and, I hate you, you hate me. So I had never really known that. And so when I got in conflict in my last relationship, there was a little bit of that because that's how her parents were. And I said, I don't like that. That's not how I would approach those conversations. As I said before, my mom is a therapist. My dad says, what are emotions? Those sound funny. So emotions are not his favorite thing in the world. He's the wonderful, wonderful man. So for my mom, I learned a lot of emotional health and emotional awareness. From my dad, I learned a lot of stability and consistency. So just, this doesn't happen every single time, but this is our goal every time we have conflict. Trying to think of what's a good story to tell with conflict. Which one did we talk about telling?
I don't think we've ever had conflict in our entire life. So.
Is this our first fight? It sounds like it. So the biggest one that I can remember, not the biggest one, but the most significant one, we had talked a little bit when we first started dating about past relationships and past experiences with people. And there was one person that I was still a little bit anxious about. Not because I thought she was ever going to get to be with them again or wanted to be with them. We were fully committed to each other. But for some reason, I was still kind of anxious about it. And I waited on it for a while because I'm like, it'll probably go away. And I don't really need to talk about it. But one day I said, hey, can you tell me more about this relationship? I have a lot of unanswered questions, and it still makes me feel kind of uneasy. So can we sit together and just talk about it tonight? We talked about it, and I felt worse, I think, after we talked about it. And not because we did anything wrong. We talked kindly when we went through it, and I was like, I don't understand why I feel this way. So I sat on it for a week, and I was like, okay, what is this? We're married. We're sleeping in the same bed. We were hanging out. We were totally fine. But in the back of my head, I was like, okay, I still feel really anxious about this. So I talked to my best friend, Janelle, about it. I was like, okay, having these emotions, do I feel jealous of a past relationship? And she really helped me put things into perspective. She's like, yeah, it's jealousy. You're in love with this person. They're your whole life. And it sucks to hear about stuff in their past. So that night I said, okay, I have some closure. I have some understanding of my emotions. Let's talk about this. Mm. So here's kind of how we did it. We encountered our conflict. I could have gone into it immediately because the whole verse about don't go to bed angry. We could have talked about it immediately, but I needed to process my emotions so I could actually understand how I wanted to present them to her. So I took some time. I made sure that I understood my emotions before discussing. Before we started, I turned on the lights in our little apartment. I got on the couch. We put a blanket over us. I held her in my arms as intimately and kindly as I could. And I said, okay, we're going to talk about this now. I did everything I could to make sure. I said, hey, I love you so much. This is not because we're fighting. We're not talking about this. I just want to get to know past you better. I don't need to know specific things you did with anybody, but I just want to know your mindset before, during these moments. The biggest thing, I stated the problem and the basic emotion I felt in association and why. I didn't say, you had a past relationship with someone, that makes me angry. I waited and I said, okay, what is this emotion I'm feeling? I think it's jealousy. I think it's not rational because we're married. This was so long ago. I said, okay, I think it's jealousy. I was feeling a little bit jealous, maybe because I didn't get to experience that with you. And I stated my emotion. I stated why. And probably one of the biggest things that helps me with healthy conflict is I do everything I can to make myself seem like the lesser person. So I'm not raising my voice. I'm not trying to get above her to make her see my perspective. I am fully sunken in and saying, hey, I'm going to be embarrassed. I'm going to share all my raw and vulnerable emotions. I want you to know that I am totally fine looking like an idiot right now. Even if I'm wrong, my whole goal is to make her feel comfortable sharing things with me.
And he made me feel so safe and comfortable to share anything and everything. And I think that's the goal, is just how can I listen well? And to use I statements too, because it would never felt like it was an attack. It was just, how can I understand past Kelly better? And through that conversation, it was really hard. It actually took a process of a week to talk through it, but it truly grew us closer together as a couple.
And one thing I always like to do after I state all my stuff and say, hey, here's my side of everything. Now, how do you feel about that? It's not just a conversation of, here's what I feel. Okay, now we're back to being fine. Hey, how do you feel about that? And then once I'm done talking, I am done talking. It is fully her floor. I gave her as much time as she wants. She gave me all the time in the world to talk through my emotions. I give her my full direct attention. And the only thing I ask is, okay, I don't understand that. Can you help me understand that a little bit better? I am fully in to just making sure that she is fully understood.
And I love hearing everything on his heart and mind because he's an introvert. If introverts talk, you gotta listen.
So if our only goal in conflict is for someone else to understand us, we will very frequently be misunderstood and frustrated. If our entire goal in conflict is to understand the other person and we're patient in doing so, we set up conflict to grow us and to help us find how to love each other more, and conflict becomes much more successful.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, I love conflict. Just kidding. Still don't love it, but I think it does help us grow more as a couple. So friends, I think we're going to close up here.
Brandon, my boy, you can come up.
And
Somewhere.
I think, we try to go through 3 points of intentionality. When we start our relations off intentionally, by communicating, because communicating is key, by communicating with each other in healthy ways, conflict becomes just another tool in growing us closer together and more in love. I know that, going on dates and having these cute things that you do at the beginning of dating, it's so fun. It brings you closer together. But also conflict is a tool to help bring you closer together. I think this is how we set ourselves up for success in marriage. So how do we apply this to our relationships now? It's never too late to start, actually. And if you're single, you can still keep practicing this. But I have a few questions I want you to ask yourself. I'm going to put them up right here. But is this person that I'm with giving me peace? Are they emotionally and spiritually mature? Do we have similar values? Can we get through conflict and grow closer together? Logan has always reminded me that all bad things come to an end. So if you're still struggling with knowing, is this the right person for me? Know that time is on your side. God's timing is perfect, and he'll reveal whatever he needs to and whatever you need to know in the right time, as long as we are continuously open to it. Friends, I hope that you can keep fighting the good fight of faith to grow closer to him, that we can date with intentionality, that waiting is not wasting. There's something in that we know that God is giving us purpose in it. And to just invite God into our communication and into our conflicts.
In response to that question, is this the right person for me? Is this the person that God has for me? We put up a QR code with a bunch of questions that we tried our best to answer over the week. And there was a couple like that, hey, I'm dating this person. I feel pretty good about it, but there's still something I don't know if this is the person that I'm going to marry. So in response to that, I would encourage you to ask yourself and ask your partner a couple questions. Do you feel 100% comfortable moving forward as you progress in your relationship? Do I have any questions that I need to ask this person that I'm afraid to ask them? If I say no to something, will this person still love and respect me?
I think it's so important to be intentional in starting well, but also I think it's important to end well if the relationship just does not survive. And that happens a lot. There have been some great conversation that I've had with people that we've closed the door on, and we could both shake hands and literally walk away with no bad feelings. And I think there's also been the opposite, where we've just continuously just kept fighting even after we ended things. I've experienced both ways, and I think no matter what, you have the power to end well. Like what Logan said, you always have the choice to take the higher road.
Real quick, one thing I've always kind of told her, and then Janelle, is whatever conflict we went through, communication and mistakes are always redeemable. You can have the biggest fight with somebody, and your friendship can be over, your marriage could be over, whatever it is, everything is redeemable. If you come to someone humbly and,
So true.
I made a mistake.
Everything is
How do
redeemable.
we fix this?
And especially in God's eyes, especially as a church family, like we will always try our best to be Christ-like and to redeem others. But lastly, friends, I know that intentionally starting well is so important, and intentionally ending well is just as important. There's so much more to be said about this, but if you want to talk more about it, we're going to be posting on our Instagram at Praxis Ministry, just a little Q&A. If you have questions, you want to submit your question on there, we'd love to have a dialogue with you, and we'll be answering those questions throughout the week.
Jesus lived a life that was fully dedicated to the people around him with no really consideration of his own well-being or actions, and he was fully vulnerable, fully open. And we're going to listen to a song in a second called Sails. It's beautiful, and the girls are going to sing. It sounded incredible when they were practicing. The bridge says, "I let out the sails of my heart. Here I am, here you are." And Jesus poured out his entire heart just to save us. So how much more loved do you think the girl or boy that you have a crush on would feel if you loved them like that? What would it look like if we modeled our lives like that? What would the dating scene at Praxis and Loma Linda and the world look like if we were fully just interested in making someone else feel completely loved? What if we focused all our energy on just making someone feel safe and loved and communicated with and heard? How much more love would you feel if someone else did that for you? We're gonna bring down the lights a little bit. We're gonna listen to a song together. Think on those things for just the next 5 minutes as these girls sing the song for us.